until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words during a sermon at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. It was March 31st, 1968, just 4 days before his assassination. Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that the time is always ripe to do right. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared powerful sentiments to his fellow clergymen in Letter from a Birmingham Jail. It was written in April of 1963. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of bottomless vitality, they continue to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because of the sacred heritage of our nation, and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King shared these transformational words back in August of 1967 during an SAOC conference here in Atlanta, Georgia. I say to you today that I still stand by nonviolence, and I am still convinced that it is the most potent weapon available to the Negro in his struggle for justice in this country. And the other thing is that I am concerned about a better world. I am concerned about justice. I'm concerned about brotherhood. I am concerned about truth. And when one is concerned about these things, he can never advocate for violence. Darkness cannot put out darkness. Only light can do that. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King shared these words during his I Have a Dream speech in August of 1963. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words at the conclusion of the Selma to Montgomery protest marches. It was March of 1965. Yes, we are on the move, and no wave of racism can stop us. We are on the move now. The burning of our churches will not deter us. The bombing of our homes will not dissuade us. We are on the move now. The beating and killing of our clergymen and young people will not divert us. We are on the move now. The wanton release of their known murderers would not discourage us. We are on the move now. Like an idea whose time has come, not even the marching of mighty armies can halt us. We are moving to the land of freedom. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words during his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in Oslo, Norway, back in 1964. I asked, why is this prize awarded to a movement which is beleaguered and committed to an unrelenting struggle, to a movement which has not won the very peace and brotherhood which is the essence of the Nobel Prize? After contemplation, I concluded that this award, which I receive on behalf of the movement, is a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the critical, political, and moral question of our time, the need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resulting to violence and oppression. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of former District 3 resident, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King delivered these words during his Beyond Vietnam speech in New York City back in April of 1967. We still have a choice today: nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. We must move past indecision to action. We must find new ways to speak for peace in Vietnam and justice throughout the developing world, a world that borders on our doors. If we do not act, we shall surely be dragged down the long, dark, and shameful corridors of time reserved for those who possess power without compassion, might without morality, and strength without sight. Now let us begin. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. This is the calling of the sons of God, and our brothers wait eagerly for our response. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King delivered these words during his I've Been to the Mountaintop sermon in Memphis, Tennessee, back in April of 1968. It was his final speech. We don't have to argue with anybody. We don't have to curse and go around acting bad with our words. We don't need any bricks and bottles. We don't need any Molotov cocktails. We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country and say, God sent us by here to say to you that you're not treating his children right. And we've come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, We do have an agenda that we must follow, and our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. penned these words in 1967 in his last series of essays entitled, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?" It would be his final book. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King shared these powerful words during his Give Us the Ballot address at the prayer pilgrimage for freedom in May of 1957. Give us the ballot and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights. Give us the ballot and we will no longer plead to the federal government for passage of an anti-lynching law. We will, by the power of our vote, write the law on the statute books of the South and bring an end to the dastardly acts of the hooded perpetrators of violence. Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
In November of 1957, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached these transformative words during a sermon at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. It was entitled, "Loving Your Enemies." Within the best of us, there is some evil. Within the worst of us, there is some good. When we come to see this, we take a different attitude towards individuals. The person who hates you the most has some good in him. Even the nation that hates you the most has some good in it. Even the race that hates you the most has some good in it. And when you come to the point that you look in the face of every man and see deep down within him what religion calls the image of God, you begin to love him in spite of. No matter what he does, you see God's image there. There is an element of goodness that he can never slough off. Discover the element of good in your enemy. And as you seek to hate him, find the center of goodness and place your attention there, and you will take a new attitude. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Today is January 18th, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Committee on Council. I am Andrea Boone, Chair, and I would like to welcome everyone who has joined us this morning. Mr. David Johnson will serve as our Research and Policy Analyst. Mr. Johnson, will you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Andrea Boone.
Present.
Councilmember Amir Faroki.
Here.
Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Here.
Councilmember Antonio Lewis.
Here.
Mary Norwood. Councilmember Howard Shook. Councilmember Matt Westmoreland. Here. Madam Chair, quorum present.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The Committee on Council recommends on matters pertaining to the operation of the Atlanta City Council, executive branch appointments confirmed by the Council, ethics issues such as conflict of interest, revision, codification, and clarification of ordinances and resolutions. Council agenda, elections, rules, conduct and decorum of council, and procedures for the office of the City Council and the office of municipal clerk. This year, redistricting. That schedule will be provided by our municipal clerk, Mr. Forrest Webb. We are also joined by our president, Mr. Doug Shipman. Welcome. Mr. Johnson, will you please read our remote meeting statement?
This Committee on Council meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with Georgia Code Section 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 404-902-5066, conference ID 151945, which was noted on the January 14, 2022 Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantaga.gov, the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Committee on Council presentation page. The agenda was published and made available January 14, 2022 via atlantacityga.iqm2.com. In addition, the public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6059 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. the day before this meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Members, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved, Westmoreland.
Is there a second?
Second, O'Neill.
Thank you. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda has been adopted.
Members, is there a motion to adopt the full council agenda?
Westmoreland, motion.
Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. 6 yeas, 0 nays. The full council agenda has been adopted.
Election of the 2022 Committee on Council Vice Chair. At this time, I would like to nominate Councilmember Mary Norwood to serve as the Vice Chair of the committee. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor of appointing Councilmember Norwood as the Vice Chair? Any objections? Then by unanimous consent, all the members present, Councilmember Norwood will serve as the committee Vice Chair. Congratulations. (2022) Committee on Council Goals and Objectives. The 2021 goals and objectives have been distributed to all members for your review. Please send any recommendations for 2022 goals and objectives to myself, Councilmember Andrea Boone, and Mr. Johnson, David Johnson, by Friday, February 4th. we should be prepared to review and adopt them at the Monday, February 2nd meeting. Staff, do we have any public comments?
We do, Madam Chair. One moment.
I am that I am, Brother Anthony Muhammad. I command spiritual energy to teach my soul consciousness every day. I am no longer a believer in the Roman Catholic Church Christianity. Council on committed. I have no need for religion. Even what I learned as a Muslim, I recognize that our ancestors were spiritual. They was factual. They was able to work with one another, knowing that their vibration, their frequency would attract the pattern of creation. The law of attraction, all elements are to be one with self and one with one another and creation. And we are not that. So the battle with different theologies of man-made religion. Why do we have a organization set up by the Council on Committee, ACOI, Atlanta Commission on Women? It was listed in 1993, and even today, you find the work of this committee not being favorable for the interests that were created to help women and children and seniors have affordable housing. I asked years ago, allow me to join this committee. Because these fraternity numbers, these sorority numbers, now, as were Ms. Keisha last bottom, it only was women. A lot of them affiliated with her sorority. Therefore, I ask you, member of council, you new member, and my Caucasian, my Asians, and Mr. Faruku, and all here. This represents energy for righteousness and justice for the least of those. Let's be like electricity. You can't destroy it, you can't recreate it, but you be in one accord, you have access. We need to be in one accord. Council on Committee, and let's get what Mr. Dixon said at Martin Luther King's birthday. I want affordable housing, but he didn't do what Miss Mary Norwood did, or did he do what Mr. Shook did? When they came into office, they voted for Bankhead to have access and legislation to come up with access. And then Mr. Dixon promised we need somebody to speak collectively for the benefit of the poor and affordable housing. Atlanta owes that. The state of Georgia, old dog people, you did wrong to our ancestors as well as we are today. Brother Anthony Muhammad, As-salamu alaykum, the ancient name of the Creator, not Sharuf. The ancient name of the Creator, not Sharuf.
Greetings, members and staff of the Committee on Council, and special greetings to you citizens and voters of Atlanta who are listening to our public officials and to comments made by the public. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. Thank you for Resolution 22-R-3051, authorizing a renewal agreement with Conway Parliamentary Services. On behalf of those in our city who have had training in parliamentary procedure and who know when council members are taking shortcuts that undermine the professionalism of Robert's Rules of Order, I trust that sometime before year's end, there will be less use of that obnoxious phrase, so moved. I also hope you will cut back on that new practice where the chairperson of the committee makes all of the motions and then asks for committee members to second the motion that the chairperson makes. The less council members adhere to proper parliamentary protocol, the less professional council members look in the eyes of some. We can do better.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next, we will move to resolutions for our 3 items that will be taken today. Mr. Johnson, will you please sound item number 1?
Item number 1, 22R3003, a resolution by Councilmember Alex Wan to appoint Councilmember Alex Wan as a replacement for former Councilmember Jennifer N.I. to serve as a member of the Alcohol Technical Advisory Group 3, ATAG, for the duration of its existence and for other purposes.
Is Councilmember Alex Wan available to speak to this resolution?
Councilmember Boone, this is Alex Wan. I am here on the call if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Good morning.
Colleagues, thank you for letting me a few moments to speak to this. Those of you who are new might not be familiar with the Alcohol Technical Advisory Group, which was formed, this is its 3rd iteration, to lead a conversation around reforms, revisions, and other updates to our alcohol code. My predecessor, Councilmember Jennifer Ide, was one of the council appointees to this, and there was a lot of progress that was made towards the end of last year in terms of the first phase of revisions. I'm asking my colleagues to consider allowing me the opportunity to pick up the baton where she left it off to continue this important work. I know this falls under Public Safety Committee. I've spoken with Councilmember Phyllis about this. This will involve all members of council. It affects every corner of our city. I'm absolutely open to continuing the dialogue with everybody and understanding how it affects your districts and the city as a whole. It's just important that we don't lose the momentum that we found we're able to gather towards the end of last year. And like I said, I would be honored to be able to continue that work. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, we need to refer this item to the full council with no recommendation, as this is a council appointment. Is there a motion to refer?
So moved. Westmont.
Is there a second?
Second Hillis.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Will everyone please vote?
I lost connection for a second on mine. It's trying to, so Antonio Lewis voted yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is forwarded with no recommendation.
Thank you, Council Member Wan. Mr. Johnson, next item.
Item number 2, 22R3051, a resolution by Committee on Council authorizing the mayor to execute renewal agreement number 1 with Conway Parliamentary Service for SPS 1200297, City Council Parliamentary Services on behalf of the Atlanta City Council in an amount not to exceed $70,000. All contract work shall be charged to and paid from account numbers listed herein and for other purposes.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval, Westmont.
Is there a second? Boone will second. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 1 abstention. This item is favorable.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next item.
Item number 3, 22R3052, a resolution by Committee on Council to amend Resolution 20-R-4119 for the purpose of removing the zoning committee and committee on council meetings from the committee of the whole during the regular scheduled meetings of city council and for other purposes.
Is there a motion to approve?
Westmoreland moves approval.
Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. At this time, we do have some very important announcements. The council members, the Committee on Council, will be accepting members that are interested for the vacancy on the Atlanta Regional Commission to be filled by appointment of the City Council. We need those names by January 28th, and you will receive a memo from Mr. Forrest Webb regarding that procedure. Also, nominations were requested from the governing board of the Office of the Inspector General, 3 members of the Atlanta City Council, of which 1 shall be a member of the Finance Executive Committee, elected annually by the Atlanta City Council. We'll receive that memo also, and we will be receiving in a 2 weeks a redistricting schedule from Forrest Webb and our law department. Are there any more announcements? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you. This meeting has been adjourned. Have a great day.